So hello everyone and welcome back to Apex33. This is a bit more of a casual video today. We're just doing a workshop update. This is everything that we've done in the workshop together and a little bit before I started a couple of years ago. We'll be uploading videos like this every 3 months just to keep everyone up to date about what we're doing, what projects we're doing, and
a documentary of things we break.
Yeah, that's probably quite accurate as well, actually. Do you want to start off with this one?
Okay, so one quite exciting project was a silver Road Eagle track car. Belonged to a good friend of mine in Brighton, and he really wanted a rear disc conversion, which just wasn't done on a 33 unless you do some DIY mods. So we made some brackets with the help of a friend, and using 145 discs and GTV calipers, we did a disc conversion. While we were there, he had a petrol tank leak, so we changed the petrol tank, and that disc conversion was brilliant. It's going to be something I'm going to do to my car next year, so we'll have a more detailed catalogue of how it's done. But that rear disc conversion was good, and it made the foot pedal much more responsive. So there's been good feedback from Alan about the results of that. Another interesting project, which is still going on now, is a black Series 3 16 valve, which I've known for the last 3 owners. I've known the car for a huge amount of time, and my good friend Joe that owns the car now, he has plans to keep it for the rest of his life. I think he'll be buried in that car. He really will. Very young, Scottish lad, been born into Alphas, and he had this totally standard black 16 valve 33, but he wanted every aspect of it improved without going into the territory of becoming a boy racer. So to start with, we kind of did the work in 3 stages. So stage 1, all the suspension was fully stripped off. All the arms were powder coated, and he wanted the car to be a bit of a street sleeper. So still look fairly standard, maybe with a bit of a lower stance, but handle like nothing else. So all of the bushes were replaced with poly bushes, but he wanted the black poly bushes, which are incredibly hard, make the car handle like it's on rails. The 14-inch wheels were replaced with 16-inch, which were refurbished, and he chose to have them painted a burnished gold, which was lovely against the black paint. The brake calipers were refurbished and with brand new Tarox discs, just transformed the braking. There was a lot of taking bits off, painting, putting them back on with new bolts, just to make the car look beautiful underneath. The suspension, took the struts off, fitted Coney Sport shock absorbers and eye-back springs, which, working with the black poly bushes, made the car handle incredibly well. And thinking that was the end of what he wanted to do, he then started talking about the seats and the door cards and the interior. So this is during this particular job where Cohen got involved.
Yeah.
And he fitted the interior.
The full
after it was all
interior was retrimmed with black Alcantara, leather and red diamond stitching, all done by hand by a good friend of ours.
He's a fantastic trimmer.
An absolutely amazing job. And it wasn't just seats, was it? It was door cards and what else was it? It was
the gear lever gator,
that too, yeah.
sun visors, and even the little binnacle that goes over the dash dials. That was trimmed with all the stitching around the edge, and this guy doesn't have a CNC machine, which a lot of the big trimmers have. He has a wooden table, a sewing machine, needle and thread, and old-fashioned talent. He did it all completely by hand. So how you stitch those diamond stitch lines by hand and keep it straight that many times and do it correctly is incredible. One of the things we did to the front seats as part of the retrim is we fitted some heat pads and made a heated seat conversion for the guy, and we fitted the switches either side of the gear stick, which looks quite nice, and it's nice. It doesn't cook you, but it warms you up. Very nice. So that was that. The suspension and the interior and the brakes. But he still wasn't totally finished with his upgrades, so he wanted a new engine and a nice shiny gearbox. So fully rebuilt engine was fitted, all standard, just new parts, all painted red and silver, which again was his choice, and it was all fitted, still running on Bosch, all, like I said, all original, no performance upgrades going on, and it all fitted beautifully. The gearbox has got a few go faster options in it. It does have a limited slip diff, and some of the ratios have been altered, which make a big difference when you're driving it, especially when you're in a go faster car. So it's still 140 horsepower, but he has plans in the future to change that. So there we go. The car is back with us now. We're going to uprate the fuel system with some Cytec pumps and filters and a much better adjustable pressure regulator system. And once that's done, the axle's coming out to be powder coated, new brake lines, a stainless steel exhaust, and then the icing on the cake is going to be a full respray with every single dent removed from the car. So it's going to be a beautiful show car when it's done. It's an exciting project, it really is.
It'll literally be as good as new.
Yeah, it'll be better than new. That interior shows it off. Just have a look at the pictures.
And that's Series 2.
So that's the first Series 2 I've worked on, and obviously the first one Cohen's worked on.
Yeah.
For a very long time.
Yes, quite a new project. We first met the owner at the Spring Alpha event.
Cohen first met him at Spring
Okay,
Alpha.
I first met, yeah.
Sorry. I've known Paul for what seems like decades.
Yeah. So yeah, I first met Paul there, and it's an amazing looking car, beautiful, and it's just come in. We've spent a couple of weeks removing the interior, and now it's having brand new full length seals installed by
our
a local
good
garage.
friend who does all the welding for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, the outer sills full length front to back. The driver's side one wasn't that bad, but the passenger side, the amount of repairs that have been patched into that sill to get it through previous MOTs were counted in 2 figures. So all chopped out, and Paul managed to source original Alpha panels, which is brilliant because you know they're going to fit. So we're currently putting the interior back in. We're going to put an MOT on it for Paul, and then you will see it at the next event at the end of August. So it was in our last video, and you'll see it in the next video. So another project we're doing is a red Series 3 8-valve IE. So over to you. What have we done to that?
There's been a few smaller issues. I think the biggest issue that we first dealt with was a water leak in the passenger side that took a little bit of doing. We kept fixing an issue, but then that wasn't the actual issue that was causing the water leak, and
it was a huge leak. John would drive it in the rain, and in less than an hour there was a pond in the passenger footwell. So
yeah,
it was one of those jobs where one of us is upside down under the dash looking, and the other person's outside with a hose pipe, and we're trying to find it.
I was usually the one upside down.
It happened that way. Yeah. Well, you're younger, so you can get into the places that I used to get.
True.
But we found it in the end. And what was the leak?
It was just under the heater box. It was some of the pipes in the heater box.
Yeah, and the fittings to the heater box to the car.
That
so
too, yeah.
very, very easy repair. But to do the repair, you have to take out the heater box, which anyone that's ever worked on a 33 would put that job with changing a steering rack. They're just one of those jobs that when you have to do it, you look up and you say, oh no, that's a pain. But it was done, and it was cured, and it now no longer leaks. So that was the first of a few jobs on John's.
Yeah, there's a couple other things, just smaller things. Fixing the fog lights was one. That was just an electrical issue in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, wires in the wrong places.
Yeah, but that's a common issue. Is it? Oh, really? Oh. So, sorry, has it gone full display, is it?
Yeah. So John wanted the car to look as good as it went. So it was just a lovely standard original car. We managed to source some new old stock headlights and indicators for him, and changed some gear linkage bushes as well, just to help, because it was struggling a bit to get into second and third. And we were kind of getting to the end of the job, and I was thinking, okay, it's done. Come and get your car, John. And then at the 11th hour, John said, thank you very much. Can we paint it? Let's do a respray.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a lovely car. It had faded very pink. It wasn't rusting, but it just did what a lot of cars of that colour did in the 90s. It went pink. The sun bleached it. So, okay, we took those lovely new headlights out, stripped the car, not to a bare shell, but did quite a lot of stripping. And I'm very lucky that there's a friend of mine who is an incredible painter. His attention to detail is out of this world. The way that a painter looks at a car is different to how a mechanic looks at a car. A mechanic looks at a car and says, yeah, that's quite tidy, and a painter looks at it and he says, there's 150 dents in that panel. And he's spotted bodywork issues with that car that I never saw. And he's painted it, and it's only just been done. I think now you could probably still smell the paint. It's just been finished. So over the next 3-4 weeks, we'll be very carefully rebuilding the car. Every component will be cleaned and put back on, and that will be the icing on the cake for John. A nice painted car with brand new headlights and no water leak. So that's been an exciting job. It's not every customer that says, can you paint it for me? So Joe's will get the black paint job maybe end of the year or next year, and now this one's been done, so it's exciting. It's good that these big jobs are happening on cars. So I think that moves us on to
the
Richard's car.
Black P4. Yeah.
Very nice to work on a permanent for.
Yeah.
Rare machine.
Came in with quite a long MOT fail list though, didn't it?
It was in chapters. It was incredible, although mostly brake related.
True.
But it was a huge MOT failure list, yes. But it's still with us, and I think it's safe to say that we're probably 3/4 of the way through the job list on this one.
Still just trying to fix the four-wheel drive.
Four-wheel drive system doesn't work, which obviously isn't an MOT issue, but Richard would like it working. I'm pretty sure the fault with that is a sensor at the back of the electromagnetic coupling. It's engaging, but then it's immediately disengaging. So I think it's an issue with that. but we had to put a new front end on the car. The bumper was smashed to bits, so we painted ourselves. We didn't get the painter involved in this. We did a good DIY paint job on the bumper for him. We changed the headlights, indicators, grille, radiator, because it was all very tatty and falling apart. I don't think it had an accident. I think it had just been neglected, and the bumper damage, I think, was where he bumped it down a high curb and ripped half the bumper off. So that was all done. A few other little jobs like thermostat, and just recently we've been looking at the brakes. So it didn't have any handbrake at all. So put brand new handbrake cables on, which soon solved that issue. Obviously the P4 has got rear discs, so the rear brake setup is very different to the other 33s. So that was done. It now has brakes and a handbrake that works. And there was some wiring issues under the dashboard, so that's been tidied up. And while it was with us, it all of a sudden failed to start. It just wouldn't start one day. So we looked into that, and just last week managed to get it working.
Yeah.
So going through the fuel system by stage, and turned out to be just a blockage in the fuel line around the injectors. So managed to sort that out, and it now runs very well. So we're getting close to doing welding on that for its MOT, and also we need to bleed the clutch and the brakes. So getting to the end of that one.
I forgot about the clutch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't work, did it, last time?
No.
Last time we were down there.
You can do that. Well, I'll be busy making the tea, so you can do the clutch on Richard's.
I look forward to it. Sweet.
He's not. He doesn't know it yet, but he's not.
Never. I've managed to avoid quite a lot of the so-called bad jobs on 33s so far. Like the heater box, I haven't had to do that. I haven't had to.
And how many have we done in the last couple of months down there?
Yeah,
Couple?
Yeah, a couple.
Who's done them?
You.
Next one's got his name on it. Yeah.
Well, mine hasn't gone wrong. It's yours that went wrong.
Anyway. Back to it. Before this becomes a one-man show. There's a door there, test it. So we need to definitely do some talk now about Namdi's grey 16 valve.
Yeah.
Another car that I've known for many years. It's belonged to this guy. Wow, for I don't know how long he's had it. Certainly 15 years plus. A very nice gunmetal grey Series 3. It was originally an 8 valve IE, and quite a few years ago, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, I converted it into a 16 valve for him, with all the brakes and suspension, cosmetics, side skirts, Recaro interior, made it completely into a 16 valve car. And he enjoyed it, he loved it, he brought it to a couple of shows. But he always, a bit like Joe with the black one, he always wanted it to be that little bit better. If you can make it 1% better, then why not do it? So you couldn't get replacement headlinings for these cars, and a lot of trimmers won't do them because they are just compressed cardboard. You can't stitch into it. But he found a company somewhere near London that managed to custom make him a headlining. So he did that. Huge expense, but an incredible job. So that's been done. I've had his car now for the best part of 3 years, doing a lot of work for him. Another one actually that a few years ago, in conjunction with a couple of friends of mine, we did a full respray on it. A lot of welding to a very high standard. All of the underneath is like a brand new car. If you were blindfolded and put underneath it and then looked up, you'd think you were underneath a brand new car. All the brake lines, fuel lines, handbrake cables, it's all brand new. All the suspension's powder coated, new bolts everywhere, petrol tank refurbished and painted. You name it, it's been done. It's been done. Now, it was featured in a magazine just over a year ago, along with the black 16 Volt we've just spoken about. And lovely machine, 4-pot brake conversion, stainless steel exhaust, the list goes on. Only 6 weeks ago I replaced all 4 wheel bearings, only 2 needed doing, but he said, well, the other 2 are probably the same age, just do them all. Next week the wheels are being refurbished and painted. What colours are you going on the wheels? We had a couple of different decisions.
Were they just black?
I think he's going gloss black.
Yeah.
There was a couple of options, but he did decide on gloss black in the end. So again, that'll be featured in the August event that we're going to. Incidentally, it is for sale. After all this work, it's for sale. So if anyone's looking for an immaculate gunmetal grey 16 valve, get in touch. It's definitely for sale for a fair price. I think it's a little bit cheap, but it's a fair price, especially considering all the work that's been done. It's a lovely machine. I would love to buy it, but there's no space. There's no space.
Yeah, too many cars.
No, exactly. So that's covered those cars. I think it's time to talk about some track cars. We've been lucky enough in the last couple of years, well, not a couple of years, 12, 18 months, we've had a couple of track cars that have gone through us.
Yeah.
So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the black one?
Yeah, so that one, well, used to just be down the road, and then...
Yeah, I used to belong to a friend of mine, Edward, who's probably watching. Hi, Edward. Thanks for what you did to that car. Yeah, I'm sure you loved it.
Oh, God.
Definitely an advert for paracetamols and lots of other headache medicine, isn't it, that car? But it's a lovely machine. There wasn't a square inch of that car which wasn't altered and modified in some way. So huge GTA brake conversion, rear disc conversion, the suspension setup was incredible with coilovers, race petrol tank, custom interior, roll cage, fiberglass panels, the list goes on, and obviously everything that's involved in supercharging a 16 valve flat 4 engine. It was running on Omex ECU, and Edward did what he wanted to do to it. He had a smile on his face, he loved it, but he kind of got to an end of an Alfa Romeo era. So he sold the car to George Strather, who is no stranger to the Alfa Romeo world. His dad, whose name escapes me, Colin possibly, but George's dad, very well known in Sud racing circles, very well known. Very good competitive racer, and George wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, get this Go Faster 33 and start doing track days. He tried a bit to make it into a beautiful supercharged running car, and I don't think he had basically the time to finish what Edward had started. So he gave me the car, which was kind of ironic because I live down the road from Edward. So the car kind of almost came back to where it started. And between us in the unit, we kind of undid a lot of the work that Edward had done. So we stripped off all the supercharger setup, which was quite interesting because it's not till you start doing that you find out the work that went into it to make it work. So hats off to Edward, all of those little brackets, a bracket that held a bracket that did something to hold a bracket to hold a supercharger in place. There was a lot going on. It was a busy engine bay. So all of that was stripped off to a naked engine, and then we built it back up with standard throttle bodies, standard everything. We fitted an ECU, a standard Bosch ECU, all original standard 16 volt stuff, and that's what George wanted. He was quite happy to sacrifice a bit of power to get it running and beautiful so that he can drive it on track. So we did what George wanted, put it back to a standard 16 valve, only under the bonnet. All the car mods stayed the same. It was purely under the bonnet we were working on. And George had the car back. He's still playing with it to get it onto a racetrack, and it was a good project for us to do. Supercharger off, standard 16 valve on. So it will see the track next year, I'm sure. But that track car was good fun, and it kind of was done back to back with another track car, wasn't it?
Yes.
So
yeah, the red track car is. Oh, it's such a nice car. It was.
You loved that car a bit, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, it's just the fact that it was a track car its whole life. It was never really a road car in any way. It always had that. It's always a track car. It had done 12,000 miles, and all of those were on track. And I also love the history of a car and what it's gone through, and the fact that the last place that car was raced at was Spa, and being a big F1 fan, that's something quite big, and one day I'd love to take a 33 track car to Spa again.
We will.
That would be so good, such a good track. But yeah, so that was fun. That was
2017. The last time that
Yes.
red car raced at Spa was in 2017. So, and that was as a 16 valve.
Which is not anymore. We didn't. Did we get the 16 valve? Or did you get it without?
No, we got the car as a rolling shell.
Yeah.
There was no engine in it. The 16 valve was taken out and went into a different race car, which I don't actually think was a 33. It was something else.
Really?
But it came to us as an engineless car. It had changed owners, and the new owner was going to race it, but not in the category that allowed a 16 valve engine. So he was asking us to fit an 8 valve engine, and he could have gone fuel injection. Now, more than once in previous videos we've talked about people going from 16 valve down to 8 valve. Steve and James did it in the white car. Gary did it in his black car that was in our last video. So it's a common thing to do. But this guy did something a bit different. He didn't go 8 valve injection. He decided to go carburetors, which is quite nice. So an 8 valve carburetted engine was built by A.D. Hawkins at AHM. Vernier pulleys. It wasn't hugely modified. It was just nicely built with vernier pulleys. Still a 1712. I think it was on the dyno at something like 121 horsepower, I think, which is better than standard, but it was just so beautifully built. So we fitted the engine. Obviously it was all wired up and plumbed to run a 16 valve. So we took all of that out. All the ECU wiring was still there, for example. So took all that out, fitted the 8 valve carb engine, and wired in what needed to be wired in to run an 8 valve carburetor engine, which is very little. The only wires to run is coil, alternator, reroute some starter motor wires, some basic fuel wires, fuel pipes, and it's now gone recently, only 6 weeks ago roughly. It's gone back to the owner in Southampton, There's still a few things to do on it, but he can do that himself. Our brief was just fit the engine, wire it up, get it running. He can do the rest himself. So amazing car to be involved in. So that will be seen on various YouTube videos in the future. So, and it was the ex-Spur race car, red and yellow. So yeah, that's got a lot of history. 12,000 miles from new, and yeah, all of that around tracks. So yeah, that was a really good project to get involved in. So after doing George's black track car, this red track car, we thought it's kind of nice if we built our own track car. Because I've had track cars in the past, although they were 75s. I've joint owned a 33 track car, but I've never owned one myself. When I was doing track racing, it was all in 75s, or not even an Alpha, going back a long time. But we have a track car project that will be documented on these updates over the next 12 months, and I think we've landed quite a good base to start with a track car.
Really good, yeah.
See, I've always said the golden rule with a track car is start with a solid car. You don't want to start modifying a car to make it go quicker if it's rusty. Obviously it can be welded up, but if you can start with a non-rusty one, it's brilliant. So we found a red 8-valve Series 3. Very lucky to find it. It's one owner from new, and it's only done 24,000 miles. Which I was a bit sceptical about, because we all know how easy it is to change dash dials on a 33 and alter the mileage. But there's full service history and all the old MOTs to prove this. Sadly, the person that bought it new passed away 18 months ago, and the car went through a house clearance company, it went through legitimate auctions with everything else in the property, and we managed to get it. And it's dirty, it's muddy, it's been sat in the field for 12 months.
Yeah.
But it hasn't killed the car. It's so nice underneath, it's so solid, and you can just tell by the little amount we've spent on it so far, of time that is, that it's only done 24,000 miles. I mean, it's all just so nice underneath. Almost a shame to take it apart and make it into a race car. But we're going to keep it road legal, particularly for the next couple of years, so we can drive it to events. So it's still going to be an MOT'd, taxed 33 on the road, albeit with roll cage and very hard, uncomfortable suspension. So it's going to be nice. I think one of the things we're going to do to it, as we spoke about in the beginning, Joe has gone with the black poly bushes to make it handle well. Well, a lot of the bits we've got ready for this track car, yeah, the back end is nylon bushed. Yeah, that's going to make driving it on the road interesting.
I wouldn't want to drive on the road.
You're going to?
No, I know I'm going, yeah.
I'll be following in the 33 that's got all nice soft suspension and big bouncy tyres, while sipping my Costa latte, and you'll be in front with your teeth jumping out your head.
Well, it makes sense why they're so strong, because of where we got all the parts from.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. So this red 16-valve race car, which is very well known, belongs to Charlotte and Louise, and it's known as the West track car. Phenomenally engineered. These girls are amazing mechanics. We went to see them recently, and their setup is great. At the back of their garage, they've got lathes and just brilliant. So we got some of the bits off their cars. It's a shame to see that car no longer on the track, but none of it's gone to waste. All the bits will live on, and we've managed to get a lot of the bits off that car, which will go on to this one. So see future updates to see how this standard 8-valve car with hubcaps and cloth seats gets turned into a nylon bushed track machine. So that'll be quite interesting.
It's gonna be so fun.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to.
It's going to be good. So it'll be a good looking machine as well as a very capable track car.
Yeah.
I suppose the last thing to think about or to talk about, all of these cars we've just mentioned, apart from the track car that we're building, they're all customers' cars or friends. They're not just customers; they're friends of ours. We've actually got, of all these machines, we've actually got a couple of cars ourselves.
Yeah.
We keep talking about customers' cars and friends' cars that we're working on, but we do own a few ourselves. So I'll talk about mine, then you can talk about yours. Because I think actually Cohen's car has got a bit more of an interesting story than mine, I think. So absolutely no stranger to the Alfa Romeo world. I've got the burgundy 16-valve sport wagon with the Zender body kit. Kind of stands out amongst the crowd for all of those reasons: burgundy, Zender, and sport wagon. And it's very nice. Everyone associates me with that car, and I'm very lucky to have it. And I got the car in 2006, and it was a non-runner. It was a non-looker as well. It was all there, but it wasn't the prettiest thing. And I fell in love with the front bumper. I saw the Zender bumper and decided to get the car there and then. And then it was in the South London area. Traded it back to mine. Spent best part of 18 months stripping the car, removing all the wildlife from it. And I got it up and running, got an MOT on it, and you may remember the Top Gear episode where Clarkson, May and Hammond went to Stanford Hall and they did their Top Gear challenge in a GTV, a Spider, and Clarkson had a 75 that he painted green. I went to that show. In actual fact, you can see the sport wagon in the episode. That's the first time the car was road legal. I got it MOT'd weeks before that day. And it was fine. It was a lovely machine. But the following year, I had it fully resprayed. So I stripped it, it was painted. And from that point on, it went from being just a road legal car into a beautiful machine. I kept on fettling and cleaning, and whenever I found a new part, I would bolt it on. And over the course of doing that for a couple of years, it became just a stunning machine. Recaro interior. I did a Willwood 4-pot brake conversion, stainless steel exhaust, and it was quite funny. I fitted the 4-pot brakes, which wasn't planned. I got a car in that had a back end smash. It had the 4-pot brakes on the front, so I thought, oh, I'll have them. So I bolted them onto my sport wagon, but then I couldn't put the wheels back on because it had 14-inch wheels and they wouldn't fit over the 4-pot brakes. So my everyday car was a 155 with black 16-inch speed lines. So I really wanted to drive this car to see what the brakes were like. So I'm sorry, 155, it ended up on axle stands on the road, and I put the wheels on the sport wagon, and it was amazing. And because the wheels were black and the sport wagon was burgundy, it looked really good. So guess what? They never came off. So that's why that sport wagon's got 155 wheels. It wasn't planned, it was just, oh, I need bigger wheels. So I then found a set of 17s for the 155. So it's quite funny how things happen. So that sport wagon, it's been brilliant to me. I've been good to it as well, but it goes to shows, and I love the attention it brings. Mentioning heater box changes earlier, that was the biggest fault it came up with in the last 18 months. The heater box failed, and I was getting condensation coming in, which was steaming up the car. So I replaced the heater box. and it's just been good. Just been a lovely machine. It doesn't do many miles, maybe 1,000 miles a year, and it's great. It's a good car.
I think one of the unique things about it that I quite like is the engine colour.
The engine slipped
It's
a
nice.
belt and blew up years ago, so I replaced it with a permanent 4 engine, which isn't a lot of difference, slightly different camshafts. But I thought, why just bolt it in? Why not? The car was recently been painted at that point, so let's make the engine nice and pretty. So I thought I'll clean the engine and I'll put some powder coated bits on it, or I'll put some coloured coolant hoses on it, and it started a theme which maybe ran away with me a bit. But what colour do you do under the engine bay of a burgundy car? You can't do black or silver. Well, you can, but that's a bit ordinary. Red is a bit of a clash against burgundy, so it went blue. And you open the bonnet and it does get a "ooh, didn't expect that" kind of remark. And it just shows the individuality of a 33. None of them are standard and original, very few anyway. They kind of invite a little bit of DIY, a little bit of make it your own. So my sport wagon is fairly original really, but it's got big wheels, exhausts, bigger brakes, and a coloured engine bay. So it just makes it mine, makes it more individual, and I quite like it. So it means you've got to work on it with gloves so you don't get the engine dirty. It's not about keeping your hands clean. I don't want to get the engine dirty. That's what it is. So yeah, the sport wagon. I've got some plans for it next year, which you'll see. But it's my car forever.
Yeah, my car. So we were searching for a 16 valve for a while because I wanted one. I particularly wanted red. I know it's a bit original, but red is possibly one of my favourite colours for cars. I think it just stands out against everything else on the road at the moment, and it looks amazing. So
that's true. Every car you seem to see on the road at the minute is either
grey,
battleship grey,
black,
or silver.
Silver, yeah.
So yeah, red was common. Now it's not.
We found a red one. I started to get excited about it after my dad told me. It was then after I was getting excited, he told me that there was a slight issue with it.
Yeah, a little, yeah.
It was. It had a bit of it was at a garage. It had a bit of a. It was an engine rebuild or something.
It had replacement heads. The cam belt snapped, so they put different heads on, had them skimmed, and I think we need to say actually this car belonged to Stuart Wilson, who's now in his late 80s, and he's one of the original founders of the Alpha Owners Club. Very well known in the vintage Alpha circles, and he's actually particularly well known. A lot of people who may be a little bit older than me will remember a story in Wales where a vintage Alfa Romeo was driven into a private swimming pool. Well, that was Stuart. And it was pulled out and it was rebuilt and whatever had to be done, but that was Stuart. And he bought this Red 33 brand new in 1994. All the Star Wars fans will love it because it was actually registered on May the 4th, 1994. That made your day when you found that out.
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah, so he bought the car new.
Cool.
Yeah. And then he did 70,000 miles in it, and approximately 3 years ago, maybe not quite that long ago, he booked into a garage to have the engine sorted out because a belt had gone. They did the work, they sorted out the cylinder heads, absolutely fine. And while it was there, Stuart told them to put a coat of paint on it because he had started to do what they all do. It had gone pink, so they did a very, very good paint job on it. And while it was in their care, Stuart sadly became quite ill. I think he realised his 33 driving days were over, so he asked them to do a service on the car and put it up for sale, which they did, which is how I found the car. They came to me to say, can you find us a buyer for this car? And it was for sale for a fair price. Sadly, during that time, the car developed a fuel leak.
Yeah.
And on a flat 4 engine, yeah, you've got fuel right on top of hot exhausts and spark plugs. The whole thing went up in flames. So
flames under the car and everything. There was black all up the rear bumper and
the bumper melted.
Everything, all the electrics under the bonnet and just
everything. So
hot sticky mess.
The heat from the fire melted all the wires behind the dashboard. To the extent that the little round air vents didn't spin, they melted in place. The interior of the car was untouched. You could sit in the car and apart from a little bit of dashboard distortion, you wouldn't know anything had happened. But under the bonnet fire, which went under the car and then licked up the back end. So, yeah, you almost wish the interior had got the worst of it because that's easy to replace, but it was everything else. So Stuart was a bit gutted, as you can imagine. He just had it painted. I mean, it was the paint job was weeks old. The fire was nobody's fault. It was one of those things. It would have happened whoever had the car at the time. But Stuart was a bit gutted. He didn't want to pay to have it all done because he just paid to have it all done the first time. So he asked us. He knew that Cohen wanted the car. But obviously, when it was for sale as a beautiful machine, we couldn't afford it. So we were just trying to find a buyer for him. So he agreed to let us have the burnt out wreck to do an appraisal on it and give him a price, although quite approximate, what it would cost to sort this mess out. So it came over and it was very sad to see it like that because you were looking at one bit of the car thinking that's a beautiful paint job, and then you look at the front end and you think different story. It's all black and charred. So very roughly I told Stuart what it would take parts wise and time to get the car mechanically stripped, fixed, and then it didn't need a full paint job. But some panels and bumpers and that needed replacing and painting. So I gave him a rough idea. And he was very impressed with the price. He thought it was going to be 4 figures more. But he still didn't want to pay that much money because he's just spent a lot on the car. So very kindly, knowing that Cohen wanted it, he kind of, for a tiny fee, which I almost felt guilty paying, he donated it to us on the condition that we don't sell it. He said, you fix it in your own time, your bits, and you fix it, and when it's done, it's Cohen's car. That's exactly what we've done. So all of this happened 18 months ago. We spent the last 18 months fixing it, and it's a lovely result.
It's really good now.
It's a beautiful machine. So it's a good example of a red late 16 valve 33. In fact, hang on. Talking about the blue engine bay of mine, tell the ladies and gentlemen what you've done to the engine bay of yours as far as colour is concerned.
It's a bit more. It's not as out there as bright blue in a burgundy car. It's
okay. Well,
I mean, red car, Alfa Romeo, Italian. So I decided I wanted a bit of an Italian flag theme under the car. So some of the supports on the outside are green, and then the actual plenum in the middle is red with white with way on the outside. So
he's got the Italian flag. It actually looks really good.
Yeah.
Very different. I don't think there's another one out there like it.
It's unique.
It's unique.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good unique. And we did a lot of, when we were building it back up, as you'll see in the pictures, we did a lot of powder coating of bits and red pipes and cleaning and everything else. So it's not modified, it's just built up nicely. So I think when we get Cohen's car, which is just waiting on one thing now, him to pass his driving test soon. October, hopefully, yes, that's when the test is booked. So next year, let's get the red 16 valve with the Italian engine bay and the sport wagon with the blue engine bay next to each other at shows. That's something we're looking forward to next year.
Yeah.
So that'll be good. So that'll be fantastic. So that's a lot of cars we've just spoken about.
That's a lot, and I think this video is going to be a lot longer than I expected it to be.
Potentially, yeah.
But it's a lot to go through. It's a lot of interesting stuff.
Future updates we'll be talking about. We're not going to go through all this again, but things we've done to these cars after this video. So we'll keep you updated.
Yeah.
So updates to this playlist, and it's been exciting. I think I'm quite excited with this track car to get this standard car onto a track.
Yeah. And that's going to be its own series.
Yeah.
We're still talking about the details about that, but I'll probably include that in the pinned comment below when that comes out, for anyone watching in the distant future. It will be there, hopefully, if it's out.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to miss it, subscribe. Just trying to get all the plugs in.
Always wanted, please. Yes, we need all of the support we can get.
The reaction to the first two videos has already been more than I expected. I think we're closing up to 150 subscribers now and nearly 10,000 views already on the first couple of videos, which is...
Well, we predicted, well, we might get into 4 figures, but now it's getting close to 10,000, so that's all good. And let's keep it going the way it's going. So yeah, it's all going well. But this is the beginning of our the workshop projects playlist. Because as well as all the nice fancy polished cars you see at events that you saw in our last video, that's all great. But we very much enjoy, possibly a bit more actually, getting our hands dirty, fixing these cars in the workshop. And breaking them. And then fixing them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good world to be in. These 33s are very rare, so trying to keep them on the road is what it's all about.
Yeah.
So I've got a huge supply of parts, sadly most of which have come off cars that are beyond economical repair. Believe me, if there's a way to repair them, we will. But the black 16 valve, which was actually a permanent 4 that we've just stripped, it was so far gone. I removed the rear bumper, and as I pulled the rear bumper, the boot floor came with it. There was no saving that one.
That was pretty bad, yeah.
Yeah, there was no saving that one. So that's actually the first car I've stripped for 3 years. The others have been saved. So we don't try to get a car and kill it. But when it does happen, every component goes to saving another car. And it's good, it's obviously working, because these cars we've just spoken about, they've all been repaired using bits that essentially have come from other cars. Because there's not a lot out there. It's not like minis, Edward. It's not like minis where you can just go somewhere and buy the bit you want and bolt it on. Which is great. It's easy. But with these 33s, I quite like the challenge of keeping them on the road. It's not so much a mechanical challenge. They're not mechanically difficult to work on. But the challenge is, where did you get the bits from? So that's what a lot of it is. So keeping these cars going is what keeps us going. So keep on with the support.
think that's pretty much everything. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. There will be more, like we just said. This is only the beginning of Apex 33. This is
very
third
early
video.
beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll just see you next time.
The future's bright. Let's go.
Yeah.